In my whole point, you ask yourself, from a data perspective, what can you learn out of this? Now, this takes me to a very interesting concept that I've been reading about for a while. This concept was known as death by GPS. Back in US, Death Valley in California, the rangers who used to patrol the national park there used to find a lot of people who've just died. So Death Valley has crazy temperatures that get to 40 to 50 degrees Celsius. And a lot of tourists, hikers, people who just want to walk in the park end up dead there a lot. Reason? Because they relied on GPS. So you wake up, they put in a GPS, and whether the GPS is, as long as the GPS has set them into a particular direction, that's where it'll go. And there's so many stories about similar incidences that have happened. One of them was, I think, a couple, I think they were in the US, if not, I think Australia, I'm not sure, but I think it's the US, who wanted to go on a hike. So they put up a GPS on their phones and started hiking and ended up in the house of a serial killer, and then they got murdered in that sense. And they did not take time to look around and figure out, where are we going? Does this place look okay? Why are we veering towards off the road? We're heading towards somebody's house. And if you read about those deaths by GPS, some of them are quite hilarious, where someone is being directed to a sea and they insist, Google says there's a road here, so I'll follow it. And you can check a very funny video that was done by Crazy Kenna, when Google directs you when you're in the rural area and you end up in people's shamba and rivers and all that kind of thing. And the whole idea is that all these people trusted technology too much. They did not take the time to use their intuition and instinct and other things that we have for making decisions as humans. So in flight 1 or 2, from the flight data, you can tell the captain, in this case, the pilot and the co-pilot, or the pilot and the first officer, set up a flight level of 1100, and they stayed in that particular level. At the time of takeoff, they knew the destination was Jomo Kenyatta, and they'd fixed their flight level at that level. They maintained that flight level until they crashed. From the speed that we're moving, there was no change in speed. And at that time, it was probably that they were flying in clouds. From an instinct perspective, there's something that has to kick in, or should have kicked in this scenario, where you look around, is everything correct? Are we flying in the same altitude that we were in? And given that they were flying possibly a new route that they're not flown before, there should have been a heightened sense of, we need to look around and figure out, even if the visibility is poor, perhaps we need to rely on our instruments more. So what are our instruments saying? Is it, are they matching up with everything else that we are observing? So it's what you'd call decision-making in uncertainty. If you want to go into a new business you've never done, you tend to be more cautious. You tend to put in a little bit of capital, gain more knowledge, expand when you have more information. So when you are lumped with uncertainty, your confidence level is supposed to reduce. And then trust more on yourself and your instinct in this case. So if you trust a GPS tracker more than what you see, then in that case, you're overconfident that the technology is working perfectly. Okay. In this case, if the pilots had not flown the Kitale JKA route before, senses should have been heightened in this case. And one of the blames that are put in the pilot was, in the report, was that the pilots had not done the flight planning. And the flight planning includes a lot of things. Whether, if you're going to use different routes, you even get to choose an alternate airport just in case if your destination airport has bad weather and you can't land, where should we land? So when there is, and that bit of flight planning takes into account the uncertainties you're likely to meet, and the biggest one is always weather in this case. So it gets me thinking about scenarios in life where there is uncertainty and you need to make a decision. Think about a CEO of a company who perhaps wants to release a new product, and they have the legal team, they have the engineering team, the product team, the risk team, and all of these people are advising the CEO. This is the same as having instruments that are giving you information. And then you're supposed to take all this information and then blend it with your intuition and then make a decision. I would wager that the best decisions in life and business are made out of intuition and less from data. Right? Data is just an equipment, just records something and gives you back what it has recorded. If you become more philosophical, you can even go and argue about, can you trust your senses? How do you trust what you've seen is what you've seen for that? So intuition and reasoning becomes a very critical point in decision making for that. There's a lot of arguments when an accident happens, especially air crashes, what role the pilot played in that particular air crash. I think the numbers should be in favor of more pilot errors than mechanical errors, maintenance errors, weather, and other factors. Sometimes it's a combination of all those factors. So after this accident, there was a lot of outcry online, a lot of blame game that usually happens about, they were young and all that kind of thing. The profile of the pilots seems okay. The captain of this particular flight did her CPL in South Africa in 2009, came to Kenya in 2010 and registered or converted her CPL to Kenya, and had about, I think, 300 to 400 flying hours. The co-pilot, the first officer, did CPL too, was rated in several Cessna aircraft, and from the background it seems they're okay to fly this particular flight. They were instrument rated, which means that they've been trained on how to use the instruments and to monitor those particular instruments. My intuition this is the uncertainty. Life has uncertainty. You're flying in an unknown area. You're starting a business you've never done. You're meeting somebody you've never known before. Then how do you pair information you're collecting and the decision making that you're about to do? In an ideal scenario, you should never trust instruments 100%. Ultimately, humans have to make decisions.